Welcome into today's show. I'm Victoria Conway, pleased to be joined by Brian Flinchum, the proud owner of Mr. Clean Bins out of Jacksonville, Florida. Brian, how are you?
Hey, doing well, Victoria.
Thanks for coming on today. Excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited here to do it too. Let's let everybody know about the trash bin cleaning industry today.
The most interesting topic there is, in my opinion. So, one of the questions, Brian, that we're going to ask all of our guests to kind of just get things started is going to be what's your favorite part of owning a business that cleans trash bins and dumpsters?
My favorite thing. It's a dirty job, so not everybody wants to do it. So I think that's my favorite thing. It's got a barrier to entry. People don't want to get dirty, and we live in a world where nobody wants to get dirty anymore. So
It's very true. There's not many people that really understand everything. Even though the trucks do a lot of the work, it's still something that you got to roll your sleeves up and really get after it. Brian, tell us a little bit about your background. Before you stumbled into Mr. Clean Bins, what did you do?
Well, I've always been a white collar guy. I did a lot of tax planning and stuff like that, boring stuff. But I also did a lot of businesses on the side as well with my wife. We had dance studios, we had talent competitions, um, we had a property management company. We even did some surf shops and sunglass stores. So I've done a lot of service, kind of retail stuff. Um, Trash bin cleaning business is a service industry, but it's also got a lot of logistics, and that was something I didn't have a background in, so I learned that quite quickly.
That's something that right away you find out, okay, how are we gonna plan out all these cleanings and people that want their bins cleaned ASAP? For you, Brian, how did you and your wife find trash bin cleaning? What's your kind of origin story of this?
Well, I always say I found out about it myself, but my wife tells me it was not me, it was her.
Mhm.
We were in London. We just taken time off of selling our surf shops and our sunglass stores. We wanted a break, so we're sitting in London at the end of a 6 week trip through Europe, which was awesome. But I didn't know what I was going to do when I got back because I just sold a business, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing when I come back. And my wife turns on a TV show, and there was this guy, I don't know, 60 years old. He'd retired from the white collar world, and he wanted to start up his own business. And he found out about the trash bin cleaning business there in England, and they had all these cool facts. Like in England, on the show, they said like over half the households roughly have it. A lot of municipalities require it. It was more popular than pest control services. And I was like, again, my wife says it was her, but I was like, wow, that sounds like a great idea. We should try this out in the U.S. And so as soon as I got back from that trip back in July of 2018, I Googled trash bin cleaning, and guess who was at the top of the search? It was sparkling bins. So that's how I found out about, and to be honest, I didn't do a lot of research about other companies. I just said, I
Mm,
want somebody close, local,
yeah,
and I went down to go see your dad,
mhm.
and, very personable. I was like, this seems like a good business to get into. And yeah, I picked up my truck and I got it delivered at the best time of year, November, no, October, November, because everybody wants their bins cleaned in the coldest months of the year.
Absolutely, right? They're extra dirty. My dad likes to flip it around and he says, because of course, normally spring and summer are obviously the most desirable. He likes to say, holidays, people are coming out, they want family, they want their bins clean, more food at home. But you and I know, Brian, when it's colder out, people aren't as worried about it as ideally now, really, right? April probably would be the perfect time to launch your business, but for you, it didn't really slow you down. Four trucks in less than 4 years, honestly, because you started in 2018 and now we're just entering 2022. When you got that first truck, what do you think some of the initial challenges were as you were getting into? Obviously, you ran businesses before, so that helps, but it's still, I like to tell people, it's a business unlike anything you've probably come across before.
So like the biggest challenge or surprise?
Maybe a mixture of like what was the biggest surprise and then what did you really have to work towards solving, I guess, or working on?
Yeah, my biggest mistake is I guess I'm older than I thought I was, and and what I mean by that, I'm only going to be 43 this year, but what I mean by that is when it comes to marketing and sales, when I did my other businesses, print advertising was still a way you could get customers. Um, and I know I've seen posts that you can do every door direct mail and it can make it, but I spent about $20,000 and it was not very successful for me. So my biggest challenge when I started was how am I going to get customers? Because are the traditional ways, the more simplistic ways, in my opinion, are still are kind of dead. I'm not saying you can't
Yeah.
do
Yeah.
EDDM. It's just it has to be highly concentrated, probably in a small area, continually over a long period of time. Which I don't have the patience to do that because I don't want to grow a year, 2 years or longer from now. I want it today, right away. So, social media was probably I had to learn that. Everybody was saying, Facebook, 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 and I think Facebook was really good a few years. It's still good today, but not as good with all their new algorithms and everything. But I had to learn a lot of that stuff, and I'm a guy that didn't even have a Facebook page really. I didn't have an Instagram or a
Yeah.
TikTok. I didn't have any of that stuff. So I think the biggest challenge is a I got the truck at a bad time of year
Yeah.
in the cold winter months. That was tough already to get through with that and still be positive when the spring came. And then when the spring came, figuring out that the print media didn't work and what else to do and learning social media, that was a lot. That was a lot. And unless you're independently wealthy, you're probably want to go and jump on that truck while you're doing all this. So you're learning social media, doing all the routes, everything. And it's very tiring. I don't think I'd want to be any older doing that.
Oh no, absolutely not. I mean, it's something where correct me if I'm wrong, Brian. You used spreadsheets for a while, didn't you?
At the first 2 years,
Mhm.
it's I'm kind of embarrassed to say I did not have a CRM system for the first
Mm.
2 years of
Yeah.
business. So I grew the business up to over 1,000 customers, maybe 1,200 at the time before I even got a CRM software. So I would actually, uh, so when I would do my routes, so I would filter out like who has the routes that day, and then I'd have to export those customers into a mapping software. I think called like my not MR not my
Not
route
MRP.
online,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
MRP but
Hmm.
MRO, which was
Slight different,
yeah
right?
slight difference, but yeah. So I was backwards and yeah I think some people made fun of me, but it was nice because I actually was able to sit back and see what everybody else was doing. And I saw, everybody was trying Jobber. Was Jobber working for people? And at first, everybody's like, you got to do it. That's the best thing for billing, routing, scheduling. And then, it just wasn't. And people started hating it. And so I didn't even have to do it. I just kept reading all the Facebook comments. And then it scared me away. Yeah, so, but yeah, I stumbled into something a little different. But I hear great things about MRP. I kind of found like I grew a little bit too quick before MRP came online,
Yeah.
so I just had to come up with something a little different.
Yeah, no, I mean, Brian, I feel like with you, probably have a lot of clients that have to merge over, so that would be fun. But that's what I like. I think we use you as an example a lot for people that say, which one do I use? Get one, right? Some type just to help you, but you did it for 2 years without one. So that's an impressive feat right there, because I can only imagine. I hear our routes in the background, and I don't know how people do it for 2 months, let alone 2 years.
Yeah, it's not ideal. I'm not,
Hmm.
I don't recommend it go that long, but I do think if people want to save a little money, the first
Yeah, for
year you
sure.
could probably get by, but after a few hundred customers, don't do it. Don't be
Save
dumb as
yourself.
Brian.
Save. No, Brian's a very smart business owner. I mean, 4 trucks in 4 years definitely shows. So there's brains behind there, Brian. Absolutely. For your company, how have you utilized virtual assistants to help grow the company?
Yeah, we've so I started with just a salesperson, and I didn't
Hmm.
get the idea. Again, I'll give uh, Jason Proctor out of Canology out west. He's the first one who started using some VAs, and he told me about how great it was that he actually could go home at night and not have to do more work. And I was like, wow, you mean you're working less than 50 or 60 hours a week? And now Jason, I still think works 50, 60 hours a week. He just finds
He
other
finds stuff.
projects to
He
do.
finds stuff to do, absolutely.
So he's like a mad scientist. But
Uh-huh.
um, so me on the other hand, I was like, how do you free up some personal life? I mean, there's a lot of cool commercials about how VAs free you up, and they show guys like canoeing or kayaking out in the middle of the wilderness because they have all this free time now. And I wanted to be that guy after speaking to Jason and seeing some commercials. But what we use them for specifically is we have one for sales and one for the back office. And you could maybe get one person to do both, but it's a different personality and a different skill set. So I think if you can get two of them, great. And a lot of people start, like I started with a staffing agency in the Philippines, actually based out of California, but the folks were all in the Philippines. I mean, you can go anywhere you want. I just personally think the Philippines, the accent, the language, it works great here in Florida. Everywhere may have a different need or a different, so it could be a different location. But VAs, international VAs, because of the low cost, they could be as little as 250 to 400 or more in a week is the pay, which is obviously in a tight labor market here in the U.S. You're not going to get anybody working 40 hours for 250, $300, $400 in a week. Um, and so we have an office manager that does all the routing, well, not the routing, but the scheduling, putting the customers on that there, making sure the text notifications go out, do all the billing, um, rescheduling is needed, any customer problems, solving those, and that's all they do. And then we have another sales guy or sales manager. What he does is he's been trained on now. One thing everybody in the industry talks about is CRMs, which is like I use Gorilla Desk. There's Jobber, there's MRP, but there's one thing that people don't spend a lot of time talking about is a sales management platform because none of those really do sales management. That's a completely different platform. And so we use something called Pipedrive, and we've integrated it with our phone provider, Kixie. They actually integrate. And so when leads come in through Facebook, Google, or whatever, that lead gets pushed right into this sales software. They get an automated email, text response, and all the guy does in the Philippines, he just drag and drops. They get more automated emails and texts. And if they don't follow up, then there's separate categories, new pipelines for other automations. So it's a really cool software. Maybe the people in the first year, you may not want to blow your money on it, but in following years, it's definitely worth having, especially if you have an international person that you want to put more controls and structure in place. And that person's full-time job is to follow up with those leads and to also cold call as necessary. Um, be careful on cold calling. There's a lot of regulations and things around that, but it can be something that you can do on top of doing all the paid social media stuff as well to get customers.
I think that's a really good point because people don't really talk about who manages when they get emails and calls. Because if you're fortunate, especially during the summer, your phone's ringing a lot. I mean, I know for us, it definitely spikes up, and our office manager does an awesome job. But I'm sure there's days where she doesn't even know if she reached back out to everyone because it's a difficult job to do at times.
Yeah, yeah, it's important too because I mean,
Yeah.
once you get a couple thousand customers, I've had this conversation with your dad. It's the wintertime's tough. And you want to continue to have that salesperson there year round. And if you can come out of the cold weather with just as many customers as you had when you ended, then you're ahead of the game.
No, no,
And
and I like, yeah, it's true. It's true.
so, and we have been successful with that. And I think VAs, if you're committed to having that person on year round, and uh, then you can survive the winter and potentially come out. I think we're coming out with a couple thousand customers we already had. We're actually coming out, I think, like 50 or 60 positive through, which is it may not sound amazing, but remember, December, January, February, they're tougher months. They're tougher months.
No, and I like that you're saying that even though we're in Florida, because all the time when we get calls from prospective buyers, they're like, well, you're in Florida, so you're fine year round. It's not true. We don't get obviously as cold. We don't have those elements as difficult, but holiday mindset, that's something we continuously preach. People aren't trying to spend as much money around the holidays. They're more laid back. Kids are home from college, so they're definitely not thinking, oh, let me get my trash bins cleaned right away, even though they're in Florida. So it's
Yeah,
still
yeah,
important.
yeah. It's important for people to understand that and the psychological issues. Like, um, yeah, with having other businesses, I knew kind of
Hmm.
the ebb and flows. Like, especially with the surf shop and the sunglass place, our February numbers were bad. They were pitiful, and I was like, well, why is that? Well, you know, you haven't got your tax money back, so a lot of Americans they wait on getting that tax check back. They overspent probably on Christmas, and now they're trying to pay off their credit card now. So you just have a lot of and utilities are high, so they're maybe spending more on their heat or whatever. So that's just a tough month. So people just got to realize there's some things even if you really want to grow, there's some parts of the year where you just sit back, put your hands up, and say, hey, I understand this. I'm prepared for it mentally. That's what I tell my sales guy and say, hey, you're an awesome sales guy. Don't get bummed. It's going to be tough these months, and you got to stay positive through that. And it's working. We'll still add 1,000 customers this year, even with a slow summer season. I'm positive of it. Even with $5 gas, I guarantee you, I've looked at the numbers, and we're still trending like we did in prior years.
That's incredible. What are some of the things? Obviously, you bought these trucks to clean trash bins, but I've seen you on some of the forums talk about what you do during the winter time to maybe make up some extra revenue because people aren't necessarily running to you to get your trash bins clean. What are some of the things you guys try and promote during those winter months?
What happens is in the summertime, if you're doing all these Facebook paid leads,
Hmm.
so you're going to get a huge list of all these customers, and there's no time in the summertime to follow up with everybody. Just not possible. In the summertime, we may have a day where we get 20 new customers. So you got to think of that. Like we could have 3 good days in the summertime that does everything we do for the entire winter. so so there you don't have the capacity to follow up with all those. So what we've been doing this last winter season, this was really our first full year going through the cycle with our VA. We had him reach out and call all those leads multiple times until we were able to get them on the phone and to close them. And that helped offset. I think if you look at all the new customers, we got net of without netting out cancellations, which happen in the wintertime, he still added on, I think, close to 200. So it's great. And all we were doing is just calling everybody who expressed interest and following back up with them from the summertime because you're not going to capture everybody in the summertime that does a one-time cleaning or calls and just has some interest. But it's important to make sure you have all that, in a spreadsheet or pipe drive, whatever you use, so you can follow up with them in the wintertime.
I like that piece of advice. It's definitely something where no matter what time of the year, you want to be repetitive because if you're not on top of people, they forget about it, just like we all do with so many things. We see an ad and we're like, oh, we should do that, but we forget to. So definitely good to be repetitive. I think that's good advice and maybe not something, especially with the virtual assistants that people put focus on, but like you said, pretty low cost and definitely can pay dividends if they can sign up some contracts.
Yeah, yeah. So you think a VA, somebody making 12 to 1500 a month, and they pulled in even in the slow season a couple hundred customers. That definitely
Mhm.
pays for itself. It's a really good investment if you if you go in with a long-term view.
Absolutely. Victoria Conway inside of our podcast here with Brian Flinchum. He is the owner of Mr. Clean Bins out of Jacksonville, Florida. Brian, for you, I remember chatting with you in 2020 as COVID was full fledged, and you actually had a really good season. What were your thoughts as everything, obviously, for so many businesses, a very tumultuous time, but you grew, didn't you, during that time period?
Yeah, I think yeah, we grew still over 1,000 customers net that year. Um,
Hmm.
I remember I was bin tagging with one of my drivers as the Dow Jones, I think, fell like 1,000 or 1,500 points one day, and I
Hmm.
said, "This is going to be bad."
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, this isn't going to be good for. No, it's the same thing we thought. We didn't know from cleaning bins to manufacturing. We were thinking no one's going to spend money
yeah,
for sure.
I've actually thought a lot about this, Victoria. I mean, I'm an econ MBA guy, and I said, let's think about this industry broader. And it is a discretionary spend. People don't have to have their bins cleaned. But what do you have on the other side of things in a bad economy? Um, even in the Great Depression, 50% of the people still had a job. And I'm not saying behavior may change, but let's think about this industry. We have virtually no competition. We, even if, God forbid, something bad happened and we went through another depression, half the people still have jobs, probably still want to promote people having jobs and do it, having it, and they're still going to be more and more wealthy. It's just a bigger gap between the wealth and the poor. So if you can still go after all that upper middle class, which is a huge market, especially if there's no competition, this industry should thrive. You just got to make sure that you market to those right individuals. And that's what I've told my guys. They're like, they look at me for leadership. I'm not the world's best leader, but I tell them, hey guys, I sit here and think, even if things really, if they're bad this year with the gas prices going up and all that, there's still going to be people with money. There's still going to be a need for this service because, especially in Florida and other locations too, people don't want to do a dirty job or dirty work. And so I think over the long run, this industry is going to, boom. Maybe 1% of the people want it right now, but I think this market saturation can go to 10 to 20% eventually.
No, that's a really good point, is that people don't want to do this at all. And I think a lot of us in the industry, we talk price points, right? What to charge. And for the most part, for middle income to upper, it's very affordable. There's things that we always like to say, going through drive-throughs, going grabbing coffee. Americans do that every day and
Right?
they don't think twice about it, which is always a positive way to look at things, even during, uncertain times, I guess, from the last 2 years, as we can all learn. There's nothing really guaranteed and no one really knows what the heck's going on half the time.
Yeah. And every year has a new story. Like last year when we came out of, COVID, um, like March and April in the spring, we were getting some cancellations, and I was like, why is everybody canceling? What's going on? Oh, we're moving. Well, people move because they weren't able to move for 2 years because of the lockdowns and everything. And this year with high gas prices, what's the story? Why do people cancel this year? Oh, I got to cut back a little bit because fuel prices and things, inflation are getting higher and cost of living. So there's going to be a new story every year, and we just have to learn to adapt to it.
No, I think that's a good rule of thumb for any business, right? Especially trash bin cleaning. We were talking a little bit before we started rolling how you have a flush of sparkling binge trucks. You have a 2018, 2019, a 2020, 2021, and the 2022 on order. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the differences between your first and then the next three? The first one is a non-PTO, meaning it's powered with a pressure wash engine, a Honda GX690, which is what we use on our trailers and our non-PTO trucks. And then the PTO model, I believe you were one of the first to have our first model of the PTO.
Yeah, number two.
First,
I was number
number
two.
two, number two. That's right, number two. So you were a true guinea pig for that system, and
Yeah.
learning the different little quirks. And I know you helped us a lot with giving us feedback as we rolled that out with the PTO. So maybe kind of talk about the differences and what you've learned about the different machinery, and how you prefer to run them, and what you see maybe as pros and cons.
Sure, sure. When we got the 2018 truck, which is like you said, it's the Honda engine powers the pumps in the back. There's no PTO. There's a lot more moving parts. Um, I'm not mechanically inclined. I've remodeled some housing, so for me to get something like that, it's a lot of moving parts with the Honda generator, the pumps, everything in the back. And I'm not the smallest guy, so when you have to go repair, it's pretty darn tight. I have to get my 18-year-old son who weighs 120 pounds to jump in the back of that, that truck. But but I would say the biggest thing is there are a lot of parts in the original truck. If something breaks in that Honda engine, um, then you have that issue. You're not just worried about the truck working. You got to now worry about the Honda engine working and maintaining it. Now it was new. I haven't still really haven't had many major issues or anything with that truck. And the local pressure washing guys know how to work on that truck just by taking it to a pressure wash and repair location. Fairly easy. The pressure pro skid on the back is very standard. Nothing crazy there. But I do think there's more downtime with that truck since there are so many parts that can break. Not a whole lot, but again, I think the PTO is better. Now, I had the second PTO ever built by you. I think gentleman down there, is it Dr. Benz or Ben Doctor? I think he
Bin
got your
Doctor
first.
Spiro,
I think
yes,
I
I
think he
think.
beat me. I think he got the first one.
It's a little
Um,
bit closer in location, he was right there in Broward County, you're up, in Jacksonville. I think
right.
that might have played a
Yeah, yeah,
factor.
yeah. You gotta make the guinea pigs spread out the guinea pig
Close
zone.
by. We needed you guys close by so we can assist.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you did because now I love the PTOS. That's all I want moving forward. I still have
Mhm.
my first truck. I'll keep it and put it in an antique store when Mr. Clean Bins gets big someday. But I think um, the PTO, there's just less that can go wrong with it. Now my first truck, I will say the original system and the pulley system, it didn't have any grip, and so what happened after you used that thing for a few months, it started slipping and the pumps wouldn't go. I didn't know what was going on, and but thankfully I will give it to David and David Sanchez, your repair guy, and your dad. I called and said I'm at my wits end on this one. I'm not sure what's going on. They said it's not the pump, something on the PTO, and they're like, "Come down, Brian." So I remember driving down with my 80-year-old father-in-law who came down, and we got there I think 8 a.m. to do the rebuild of the complete PTO, and they were done by like 5 p.m. right when they were closing up over at Flower. I think it was at Florida Powertrain or whatever the name of the.
Yeah, that's our vendor down here who
Yeah,
assists us with that.
yeah, and we
Yeah,
have
we've
one up
definitely
here
had a
too.
couple versions. Oh yeah,
So
that's right. They are throughout Florida.
yeah, yeah. So we have the same shop here, but they couldn't see me up here very quick, so we came on down. Um, the total cost of a complete new PTO that your dad did was zero. So I do give you guys credit. I mean I tell that story to a lot of customers because they always ask like how is your experience with sparkling bins, and I think any vendor trying to do something new that's cool and innovative, you're gonna have some bumps along the way, and the fact that you guys took care of me, that goes a long way. So I think when I tell that story to other customers or people looking at getting in the business, they're like, that tells volumes because no one's going to be perfect all the time. It's what you do when you have those bad situations and how you react.
No, I'm glad you shouted out David. We've done two recordings today, and he's gotten two shout outs, rightfully so. I think something we try to pride ourselves on is it's a machine. Things are gonna pop up, but like you said at the end, it's how we respond to that. And obviously, knowing you had the second ever model, of course, rightfully so, we're gonna fix it at our cost to make sure that it's taken care of. Because hopefully, once we get that right, and because of you allowing us to use you as a guinea pig as well as Spiro and some others that were some of the first, it was able to evolve and get to a point where we're extremely confident in it, and we don't have to have you drive down to Miami.
Yeah, yeah, and the other
Um,
trucks, no issue at all. So it's been, and that truck since it's been done, no problem. So yeah, you guys have it perfected now. So there's no issues there, and I think now I will go back. Let's go back to you asked about the difference in the trucks. Now,
yeah, go for it.
so you know, a small time pressure washing shop, if you're in a small town, can easily fix anything on the your original SB4 gas. Now, when you get to the diesel, the PTO, you just need to make sure customers need to understand that those repairs on those may require somebody with PTO experience. And a small town, maybe there's not somebody around, but you will need to find somebody who does have that with the drivetrain, the PTO, all of that. But the good thing is those things don't break very often. I think I've replaced one drivetrain on one of those, and it was only $200 here in Jacksonville for a new drivetrain axle for the PTO. So it's been very inexpensive. You think three trucks now, and I've had these now for 3 years, and that's the only expense I've encountered. That's not much at all. So, but make sure that for those listening on YouTube, make sure that you find somebody that's used to dealing with like large construction equipment, bulldozers, things like that. They can do all that PTO work, all the repair work on the hydraulic arms in the back. That was something that I didn't understand at the time who would repair and do that, but heavy machinery guys can do all that for you.
No, very good point to make sure that you have those people nearby that are familiar with it to assist. Because David's great, but obviously David can't be in all 50 states and jump behind the truck and take care of it for you. So that's definitely a good piece of advice for some people that are looking to get into the industry. For you, Brian, obviously you've been in this industry for close to 4 years now. What do you think are some of the misconceptions about the industry that you've learned since starting Mr. Clean Bins?
Well, I think a lot of people think that this is easy money. They're like, oh man, this is gonna be so great. I'm gonna be like rolling in the money so quick. And it depends how much you want to roll your sleeves up as to how quickly you want to get that money yourself. So like I personally looked at this business as 3 to 5 years out, an investment of my time without pay. Now, if I wanted to pay myself, I'd probably need to be on the truck a bit more. I haven't been on the truck in 6 months now, and even then, I think it was like for a day. So I've been lucky. Knock on wood. I've been off the truck almost a year. I'm feeling.
Yeah, that's pretty. My dad's been on it recently. We had a lot of people out with COVID recently, and it was a wild couple Saturdays. I think he posted that his back was really he can't hop out of the trucks anymore like he could 12 years ago. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. I think your dad's in his mid 50s or so. And I was like,
Yeah,
man,
yeah.
I can't imagine like doing it every day. Well, I do have one driver who's 51, but he
Well,
looks like
that's
he's 30
awesome.
and he looks awesome.
He
But
must go to the gym a lot, Brian.
he must. But yeah, I would say it's not easy money. So make sure that you have capital on hand, and that you are willing to invest for the long run. Because I think people go in with a very short time horizon. And one of the old coaches, I think up at Notre Dame, I can't remember the guy's name. He's like, there's one thing that can fix a lot of problems, and it's money. Because money does something very important for you. It buys you time. So if I didn't have enough capital on hand, I don't know if I would have made it through my first year. Because first year, like I said, I made mistakes of spending too much on print and EDDM and all of that. So so people just need to understand it's a long-term game. And then the other thing that people need to understand is you got to get your hands dirty. I went from doing quite well in white collar world, and then your next day you're over there cleaning trash bins on the side of the road, trying to figure out how to get the business. So you psychologically you have to be tough. You can't just say, why am I doing this? Because you're gonna be day in day out working long hours, working hard, and you just need to understand that this will pay off in the long run if you're in the right market. You've done your research, and it will come out okay. um, and the last thing I'll say, probably that I think there's a misconception. I think, just the equipment and all of that, hey, everything's just going to run and be perfect every day. There's a lot of parts, hoses, valves. There's always something going to break, and so they're kind of like boats. These trucks, a boat, something's always kind of breaking on a boat, and these are fantabulous vehicles that you guys prepare and ship out. They're great. They're the best in the industry, in my opinion. But people need to understand that things are going to break, and you got to work through that. And don't get discouraged when you're out at 8 o'clock at night because you had something break down, or you can't go service people for a day or two because you're waiting on a part. Just
Yeah.
just got to deal with that and manage it.
No, it's a really good. I mean, we build these. We've been running routes, and last week we were waiting on a part for 2 days, and even we were, spinning our head, spinning our wheels, just waiting on it. And it's a true adage that they're machines, so stuff's gonna pop up like a boat. Like if you're just doing straight up pressure washing, it's kind of how you respond to that and reaching out to clients and being proactive, which is why I think earlier when we spoke about maybe CRM and assistance, that's so important. Because imagine also you're an owner operator, let's say hypothetically, something goes wrong. So on top of getting new clients, you're also trying to call them to reschedule. It can get overwhelming very quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah, and and when you're first starting with one truck, I mean, you don't have a backup. There's no option, and so it's doing a lot. At least now, once you get a couple trucks, you can say, hey guys, I'm going to extend your route a little bit today, and what we don't make up in the morning, you guys will finish up. Not a big deal. So and I've got the luxury now of having an extra vehicle that we don't have to use. But as one of I have one driver who's been with me 2 years, and he's like, hey, boss man, where's that? There's always three trucks in the storage unit, not four. Where's that fourth one? Well, there's always something to do.
It's always doing something. It's always hitting. Well, I remember last year you were like, I just need a backup, just to give you that peace of mind. I mean, to help you
Oh
sleep better
yeah,
at night, to know I've got a backup.
yeah. This is it's so there's so many psychological things. If for me, I'm a warrior. I have to have it, or else I don't sleep good at night. But I can sleep really good at night with that extra truck. But again, that gets back to, do you want to pay yourself right away? How much of a risk do you want? And I'd rather defer gratification and sleep good at night by knowing I've got, good, paying top dollar for my guys, got the best equipment, extra equipment, and all of that. And that, I think, to be successful, you got to have that peace of mind. Otherwise, you're going to get tired of it and not stick around for the long run.
Oh, it's definitely a long-term investment, so I'm glad you touched on that. We try to tell people, right? It's much as you want to have ambition, this is a long-term goal, and reinvesting back into it really helps you grow from there. Earlier, Brian, we touched on how you and your wife, or give her credit, your wife discovered trash bin cleaning. How did you guys come up with Mr. Clean Bins and your logo?
Every time we do a business, we have to come up with. My wife is a dance major, and we used to have a children's dance studio and talent competition. So we have a lot of art. So what I do is I come up maybe with a name, and then she has to come up with the logo, or better yet, she kind of gives me an idea of what she wants. And then the way it works every time is, I think Exact Ink, the folks up in Delhi or over in India, were the ones that you used to have doing the websites, and they sent back. It was so funny at the time, like this trash bin under a palm tree, and it looked really kind of cheesy at the time. And my wife's like, "No." The artist came out in her, and she's like, "This is why the way it needs to be." And yeah, so my wife designed all the colors, but the only thing I had to do is my sunglasses here. I put
So
those
is
in
that you?
there. I love these sunglasses because when I had my sunglass shop, everybody has a
Mhm.
favorite pair of sunglasses, and I still have my favorite pair of sunglasses to go with this. So,
I love it, Brian. So, was this modeled after you, or is a logo modeled after Brian Flinchum?
well, I'm not that big. I am working out now, but he does have some beefy arms. But no, that was Mr. Clean. I would have loved to have
Hmm.
done Mr. Clean with my head on the
Yeah.
truck, but I think that would have been egotistical, and I probably would have gotten a lawsuit.
I think they might have found you, Brian. They might have, especially with four trucks and four. They've been like, "Who's this guy in Jacksonville taking
Yeah.
over trash bin cleaning?" Oh, that's awesome. I love that you still got the sunglasses. I think I've seen some pictures on Facebook of like you and your boys, and you got the sunglasses on in front of the truck.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So yeah,
Awesome.
so yeah, that was for my last venture. So we tied it in.
Awesome. So, last question, Brian, before we let you go. What are your goals for Mr. Clean Bins in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think next year we're hoping at by the end of next year to be a million revenue. Not this year, but following year. But I mean, I kind of look now at at least 1,000 customers a year, um, and just trying to continue that pace that we've done in the prior years. I don't know where we'll go because I think the biggest question is how long do customers stay on? What's the customer retention? Um, I don't know exactly what that'll be, but I'm optimistic that there'll be a bigger and bigger market. Uh, you know, Fortunately and unfortunately in Jacksonville, I still have no competition. It's a blessing and a curse because it's cheaper for conversions and all that on Facebook, but you still have less industry awareness, which is why I love doing a podcast like this for people to know. Um, but I think the biggest thing is was you try to go to that next stage to be bigger. You're like, well, what worries me and causes me the most pain now? It's maintenance and all of that on all the fleet. Because 10 years from now, gosh, hopefully we have 10, 15 trucks from you guys, and so you'll need somebody who can do that. It may be a good idea for guys who really expand to buy a pressure washing outfit that can do all those repairs and have that in house. I think and I believe your dad had purchased a pressure washing business in the past, and I think that's almost a natural evolution of this business because you need those people that can do all the repairs and do stuff quickly on your team. I think you can definitely do it and sub it out when you're my size, but when you get to that next level, and there are companies that are that big. There's a guy out in Vegas, I believe, who's got a dozen trucks, um, and but Vegas has 20 people competing, so the awareness of the industry is crazy out there compared to Jacksonville. So those are things you got to fight and over time. But no, I'm very optimistic on the future.
That's awesome, Brian. I mean, we wish you continued success. You're huge advocate for the industry. I know how many people you talk to just find you. I know this is the guy in Jacksonville who's been very successful, and thank you for taking the time to speak with them, and thank you for coming on the podcast today. He's Brian Flinchum, owner of Mr. Clean Bins out in Jacksonville, Florida. Brian, again, thank you for coming on. Thank you for your loyalty to Sparkling Bins, and we all appreciate our business relationship with all of you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victoria. Have a great day.
You too, Brian. Take care.
Take care. Bye bye.